Chester asked me to tell you all what happens in the life of the future president from January on. Okay, so in December, you all elected directors, boards, chairs, people. And the very next day, there was a leadership training seminar, a webinar, on January 9th, pre-PETS at Glen Allen. I thought PETS stood for President-elect, Treasurer, and Secretary. So I asked Stacy and Trish and everybody to go with me. And so we were the one group where they were making goals, where we were together making goals. And Debbie thought that was a great thing. So they all went with me. So that was great. I wasn't alone. In March 3rd to the 5th, I went to Chantilly, Virginia for 3 days. And while I was there, we had all kinds of sessions. It was really cool. We learned a lot of stuff. Too much stuff was all coming out of the holes in the head. Diane Hageman will be our new governor. While we were there, Joe Mulcairn, our RI director for 2016 through 2018, yay, Joe, he gave a Friday night speech, which was awesome. It was short, and it was to the point, and it was funny, and it was engaging. So everybody else, not him. Okay. And then we had our... where'd Clinice go? Our new area governor, it's Clinice. She actually got us together. Sunrise, Norfolk Club, and us are part of her area. That's Area 14. So she got us together to make some goals and some plans, which was nice, very nice. And Clinice will be on a semi-official visit here May 20th to start off our year. She won't be giving any speeches or anything like that, but just to note that she's our area governor. On March 19th, we had a grant seminar. Thank you, Chan and Tom, for going to the grant seminar. I couldn't go. My entire family was in my house, so I couldn't just pick up and leave. But they went, and they got all the information and brought it back, and I was so grateful because without them, we could not put in for the grant that we put in for, and that was the wooden boat workshop. So we'll see if we get that. We did the $2,500 one because the $5,000 was included pay for the certified instructor, which they can't do without the certified instructor. However, they won't pay for that. So we're doing the $2,500 grant. On April 2nd, there was a district grants webinar, tips for applying for grants. On April 23rd, the district training assembly at Thomas Nelson Community College that we went to. Paul was there. Joe Mulcairn was there. Dave Mansfield was there. He brought Riptide to advertise the Polio Plus game. Charlie gave us a presentation on Interact and the youth programs, and Clinice took that opportunity again to get us together. Camille was there, Trish, we were all there, just learning stuff and getting PALs. I have a PAL paper like this. And then just yesterday at 11 o'clock, there was a global grants webinar, which was really very informative and had some really good ideas. So you would think after all this, Clinice said to me, aren't you excited? My answer is no, I'm terrified. Thank you.
You're right on track.
This is us next year, Rotary Serving Humanity. And we had the opportunity to meet John Germ, who is the RI president. And he is engaging. He's like a rock star. He lets you take pictures with him. He's very engaging. He's very funny. And he's going to be awesome, I think, as a president.
Thank you, Mary. Joe, would you introduce our speaker, please?
Thank you, Paul. Yes, in preparation to introduce the speaker today, I went ahead and Googled him and got all kinds of information. And I was prepared to read that, then I came here this morning, and he is a promoter. On your desk is his bio and everything else, so I don't need to read that. I will go to Plan 2. A little bit, it's brief, but it's Plan 2, and it comes in the form of some kind of an introduction. He's 5'7" tall. He weighed 150 pounds before he had this humongous breakfast. Pete Griffin, who is from Springfield, Massachusetts, I'm from outside of Boston. We will be able to understand him. He went to school at Tufts University.
Jumbo,
He's a jumbo. And he married a young lady from Cape Cod. They happened to meet in North Carolina, but anyway, they get married, and they have two wonderful children, both girls, 10 and 13. They're both avid users of sunscreen. He is not Douglas Schreiber, who is an orthodontist. He is not Mark Schreiber, who is a psychologist. So let's give a warm welcome for the acne type guy. Thank you.
appreciate that introduction. I'm going to stand over here so I can see the slides. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. This is very timely. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. And I got to say, just sitting here, I've been really impressed by the group and what you guys do, and it seems like a very giving group. And so let me preface this with saying that I hope what I'm telling you today will allow you to protect yourselves, but look out for your friends and neighbors because there's some important information here. And I think not only can I help you help yourselves, but help your neighbors, your friends, your family, so that if someone sees something worrisome, we get taken care of before it becomes more serious. So I guess we'll take questions at the end. Okay. All right. So I'm just down the street across from Centera Lee, but there's dermatologists all over, and if this makes you think of something that you've seen on yourself or someone else, then by all means, check with your insurance or check with your neighbors or your friends, and then find someone to get some help. So we'll take the first slide. So I'm going to start with the most important stuff, so we get that out of the way. And this is not to scare people. We kind of go from the worst case scenario to everything that's good, and we don't have to worry about every little thing. But things to look for in skin cancer. I'm going to start with the most dangerous form of skin cancer, which is melanoma. And there's some literature on the tables. There's some pictures which are actually going to match what you see on the screen. But 4 things we look for when we're looking at people to see if there's skin cancer. We look for a mole that has, well, 4 major things. Any features of asymmetry, one side of the mole different from the other side. If there's jagged edges to it, more than one color in a single mole. Different moles can be different colors, that's fine. Or anything bigger than a pencil eraser. So A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, and often we'll add E if it's changing, evolution. So I'm going to give you some examples of each. This is a picture of a mole. Clearly one side different from the other side in both color and shape. B, the border. If you see jagged edges, spots that blend into the background, I tell people you want to be able to take a pencil and draw a very sharp line around a mole. If you're not sure where to put the pencil, it kind of fades in the background. Doesn't mean it's bad, but that's a potential sign of a problem. And here you can see that certainly we're not a nice smooth circle or ellipse. We're kind of ragged on the edges. And we'll go to the next one. Color. More than one color in a mole is potentially a sign of a problem, and especially any colors of the American flag. You can see all that. So red, white, or blue in a mole should not be there. And then you'll have to take my word for it on this. If it's bigger than a pencil eraser, there's a little ruler on those bookmarks that we provided. So 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. If it's bigger than that or it's changing, again, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it's something that you want to pay more attention to. And then it's not unusual for a spot that's dangerous to have more than one of these features. And here we've got an example of multiple colors, jagged edges, asymmetry, and again, bigger than a pencil eraser. And we'll flip forward again. This is an example on a gentleman, of course, much bigger than a pencil eraser. You've got different elevations, different colors. These things grow slowly. You look at this and you say, well, how could this happen? How could someone allow this to occur like that? They start small, and day by day, the changes are gradual, they're slow. And then several months, or in this case, probably several years go by, and all of a sudden, it's usually a child or a family member that says, hey, look, you really got to go and get that checked. So this is sort of a worst case scenario, something that we never want to see. If we go forward, we've got a little close-up of that. And the main reason to show this is to show that you've got those features. And these are fairly dramatic examples. Usually it's a little more subtle. We'll kind of roll over to the next one. Sometimes they don't look quite so bad. So a new spot, a spot that wasn't there, that would be a change or evolution. I've got a close-up of this one where you can see, again, there's some color variation, a little more subtle. This is more what we'll typically see in the clinic when we run into something bad. So it's a little irregular on the edges, maybe not as sharp as we like to see. And again, if you look at, for me, that's about 4 or 5 o'clock, that lighter area. We've got that color variation. We'll come forward again. Another important thing, so it's not always as dramatic as what I just showed. If there's a spot on someone's body that looks different from all their other spots, even if it doesn't have any of those other features, that should arouse suspicion. People tend to make different types of moles, and one person can have multiple types. We have very scientific names for these, like the fried egg type. And that's okay. If you have a lot of fried eggs, you have a lot of fried eggs. But if you don't, and you have one, something that stands out from the rest, something that looks different, and very scientifically we call that the ugly duckling theory, that's one that maybe you want to have looked at. And I've got a close-up of this here. And if you look at this closely, you can see that it is not quite as sharp as we'd like to see. A little fuzziness on the edges, a little color variation, not quite round, a little bit of jaggedness on the edges. We'll go forward again. Not unusual to see these on the extremities, the legs, and the back, unfortunately. And that's one of the banes of our existence because you can see everywhere else. The back is overrepresented even when you account for the surface area. And so we pay special attention to people's backs and watch each other's backs and watch your spouse or significant other's back. So this is one on the leg, and if we zoom in on the next slide again, now this clearly you can see there's some topographic variation, so elevation, for me, that's 2 to 3 o'clock, there's a little bump. But you've got the color variation, a little bit of lack of symmetry. So again, these things should arouse suspicion. And let's go forward again. Okay. They can occur in areas where there hasn't been sun exposure. So there's a lot of myths out there that you can only get it where you've had sun. And sun is a contributing factor. This happens to be on the bottom of someone's foot. You see them in the bathing trunk area. They're not as common, but again, that's an important area to check. It's hard to see the bottom of your foot in the clinic. Dermatologists, when they're looking you over, they're going to check the bottoms of your feet. 50% approximately of the melanomas we see are coming from moles that were already there. So you have a spot, the spot changes. But 50% arise what we call de novo, there was nothing there. And that comes back to a change or evolution. So something wasn't there, then it's there. After the age of 25, you should not get new moles. That doesn't mean you can't, it doesn't mean it's automatically dangerous, but we're more suspicious of something that occurs after 25 as opposed to before 25. Now, most of the spots that people get after age 25 are not moles. So any new spot is not cause to panic. I don't want to overly alarm anybody. And at the end, I'll talk about benign growths that do routinely and commonly occur after that age. Well, let's go to the next slide here. We've got a close-up of that. And again, you're starting to see some common ground where we've got asymmetry, we've got pigment irregularity. But the point of this was to make that it can occur on the foot. In fact, Bob Marley, the reggae singer, he passed away from melanoma. So a dark-skinned individual, and it can occur in people with darker skin. His was under the toenail. We'll move on. So, and that's another place that we check. Okay. So this is one that breaks the rules, and I like to point it out so that people are aware of it. And this is one that tends to scare dermatologists. So it's called an amelanotic melanoma. So it's not brown, it's not black. They're kind of red. These tend to have a wet, moist appearance, and we'll often test them out thinking that it's something else. Fortunately, the other thing is something that needs to be tested, so they do get tested. But the point here is that they're not always read. Not every melanoma has read the book, unfortunately, and sometimes they'll break the rules on us. So a new spot, a changing spot, certainly a bleeding spot. To dispel another myth, moles are not always raised. Certainly dangerous moles are not always raised. You can have a mole that's raised that's perfectly fine. You can have a mole that's flat that can be dangerous. If it changes, if it was raised and it flattens, that's as disturbing or as worrisome as one that was flat and becomes raised. So we'll shift forward again. This I kind of touched on earlier. Melanoma can arise under the nail. Usually it starts as a spot and then a brown streak kind of grows out from that. This is not that common, but it does happen. It's something to be alert to. Not every brown streak that occurs under the nail is dangerous, but if you do develop one, or you know someone who does, it's probably best to have that checked. And they did a little test at the beginning of the nail on this one. That's what that little hole is to look for a cancer. We'll move on. Okay. So that's the worst thing that can happen. Those are the dangerous moles. It's going to get progressively better news. So this is a second type of skin cancer. This is the most common type of skin cancer. I think that probably was what you had. The basal cell. These usually occur in sun-exposed areas, so much more tightly correlated to ultraviolet. They tend to be pink, violet, kind of shiny. You can see little blood vessels running across.
What's the kind you call typical?
Oh, so those were melanoma. So atypical moles, I think of this as a progression. You've got normal moles on one end of the spectrum. You've got melanoma on the other end. The good news is you don't go right from a normal mole or no mole to melanoma. It's a cumulative development of changes in the cells that result from multiple failures, multiple hits from ultraviolet light or other mutations. So you go from a normal mole to a mildly atypical mole. More changes brings you to a moderately atypical mole. More changes brings you to a severely atypical mole. And if it keeps progressing, then you have cancer. So there's a time window in there where things can be caught. And we like to catch them at the mildly atypical stage, take them out, and then everyone's safe. So excellent question. Basal cell, the most common cancer in humans, and fortunately the most curable. So shiny spot, new spot, they tend to bleed easily. So a sore that doesn't heal, a spot that repeatedly scabs and heals, but never quite heals completely, scabs and bleeds again. You're washing your face, and you get a little bleeding. Normal skin shouldn't do that. If it keeps happening over a couple weeks, couple months, it should be checked out. We can forward. I've got several examples, usually on sun-exposed skin. There's a little texture change to most of them. This one's slightly raised. We'll go forward. You've got that what we call pearliness, that sort of glassy translucency, and they don't grow quickly. So again, why would someone wait on this? It was a small spot, and over time, gradually grew. Note the blood vessels on it. The reason why we treat these is they can distort structures. They can eat away at someone's ear, someone's nose, someone's eyelid. They can break down and get infected. They don't tend to go in the body, so systemically, they're not that dangerous. It's rare that someone gets metastatic basal cell, although it has been reported. But we're more worried about the infection and the destruction of structures on the body, and the bleeding, which can be quite a nuisance to the people who have these. We'll go forward again. They can be flat, so a pink area, a sore that's not healing, again, that's a danger sign. We'll go forward again. They can be raised, so something that wasn't there that then grows up, especially something that bleeds easily. In this particular one, you can see a little bit of brown on the surface. That's a little bit of dry blood. So this skin is not normal. It's very fragile. It breaks down and it bleeds easily. And we'll roll forward again. Okay, so this is sort of the opposite of the amelanotic melanoma. There's I'd say about 5% of basal cells can have pigment. And you get what we call a pigmented basal cell. It's a change. It looks bad to a dermatologist, so we'll often biopsy these thinking we've got a melanoma. And it's not good news, but in a relative sense, it's better news because instead of someone having the dangerous type of skin cancer, we can call them up and say, look, it's skin cancer, but it's not so bad. This is much less likely to give you systemic problems. So an irregular brown spot, I'd say every dermatologist I know, myself included, has biopsied many of these thinking that we had an abnormal mole or a melanoma, and we call back with relatively good news saying, look, it needs to come out, but it's only basal cell. We don't have to take out as much tissue. We don't have the systemic danger. But a dark spot could be a basal cell, about 5% of them. We'll go forward again. Okay, so that's the most common type of skin cancer, the least dangerous, and then this one's in between the first two. This is squamous cell. These tend to be dry, hard, crusty. They feel like sandpaper, and they're precursors of these little crusty spots that feel gritty. So if you're in the shower, you're washing off with soap, and your finger catches on the back of your arm, you feel a spot that feels like a little fine sandpaper. You don't need to panic. If it's still there in 2-3 weeks, it's probably worth checking. Most of these will go away very quickly on their own because they're little scrapes or scabs. The ones that stick around could be squamous cells. They'll often bleed as well, and like the basal cells, they tend to not heal. We'll go forward again. The rough texture, I'll go through these a little quicker here. Often in sun-exposed skin, that yellow is a hard crust there. We'll go forward again. They can pop out a little bit, and I'll mention these can grow rather quickly. This can occur in as little as 2 or 3 weeks, which is quite alarming. But they'll often outgrow their blood supply, at least temporarily, so then they stall, and that gives us an opportunity to take care of them before they become more dangerous. And I've got another example of this. Very hard and crusty. So new spot, hard and crusty, rough texture. If it doesn't go away after 2 or 3 weeks, you probably want to get that checked, and we'll roll forward again. This just shows sort of a top-down view of that first one 2 slides ago that we showed from the side. Okay, that's all the bad stuff. Okay, so now the good news. Most spots that most people get are not dangerous. And the most common spot are these seborrheic keratoses. The books call these velvety. If you run your hand over it, you'll feel a little texture, but it's not that rough grittiness like fine sandpaper. It's unusual for someone over 50, I keep raising that as I get older, I said 40, it's going to be 60, to not have this. So very, very common. In some families, you'll see many, they can be any color. Skin color, yellow, red, brown, black. I made this slide a few years ago. I said over 40. I passed that. It's 50 now. It'll be 60 in a few years. And they're not dangerous. We'll roll forward again. Much more common. They can be large. The one on the bottom left there is probably 2.5 centimeters. Usually they're about ½ an inch. Go forward again. They can have all the features that I mentioned in the beginning about dangerous moles. They can be asymmetric. They can have more than one color. They can have jagged edges. They can be bigger than a pencil eraser. And they change. They weren't there and they're there. But they're not moles, so those features don't apply. And if you're not sure, you see something, better to have it checked out. I'd rather see 100 of these than one melanoma. People come in every day. I've got this spot, it's changed, I'm worried about it. We tell them it's a seborrheic keratosis, and we have some tools to look at it very closely. They go home, they sleep well, we go home happy. That's the way we want it. When in doubt, check it out. Most of the spots are going to be okay. We'll roll forward again. Up close, they can have sort of this brain-like gyrations and grooves in them, and they can be a little, I'll use the word crusty, but they're not rough. They're not that sandpaper texture that you'll see in a squamous cell. So that's the most common thing we see. And then benign moles don't have the features of melanoma, so they're sharp, they're round, they're regular. I'll go forward again. They can be pigmented, but uniformly. So again, all one color. And when we look at these, we have these high-power magnifiers that we use, and we look at the pigment distribution to see if it's even, just like you want to see it grossly on the surface, even pigment distribution. That's a good sign. We'll go forward again. This you'll see in teenagers. If you've got some teens around puberty, you can get something called a halo nevus. People get very worried about these. The body has an immune reaction against the mole, which bleaches the pigment around it and causes a white circle. And if you look at a few, and let's go forward again, we've got a close-up. Most of them will have a little mole in the center. These disappear for the most part, and the white ring goes away. They're not dangerous, but again, if there's a question, always a good idea to get it checked out. We'll go forward. All right, is that a minute or two? No. Okay. A minute. Okay, so what can you do to protect yourself? I'll run through this really quick. Sunscreen, SPF 30+, protective clothing. Try to avoid the midday sun. Stay out of tanning beds. Go forward again. A few words about sunscreen. You should reapply it every couple of hours. The number on the bottle is only applicable if you apply it thick enough, which nobody does, myself included. It would take an ounce to cover the entire body, which means a 4-ounce bottle would be 4 applications. I can't put it on that thick. It's about 20 applications. So that's why we recommend 30 now instead of 15, and look for one of these ingredients. This is important. You want to protect yourself from UVA and UVB, so look for titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, or avobenzone. And I think you catch that on the video for everyone. All right, checkups if you have risk factors of family history, heavy sun exposure in the past, if you see a sore that doesn't heal, a spot that bleeds easily, or a spot that looks different from everything
Doctor,
else.
also blood thinners.
Well,
that exposes you to your skin.
There are some medicines that would make you more sensitive to the sun, could increase your risk. Blood thinners are in that category. Absolutely, and then a lot of the diuretics as well. And then, I think I made it.
Doctor, our theme for the year is be a gift to the world. Please, be a gift to the world. I would challenge you, come back and join us.
Thank you.
And we got one last little job to do. You got to pick one of these 3 tickets out of here.
1 minute, Doctor, can we get a copy of your slides and make them available on our website?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to just copy and save that?
This will be posted on YouTube shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Depends on what I have to do at work today.
All right, so close my eyes.
Pick a number.
Pick it. Last three numbers, 868.
That's the wrong number. 868. Tom. We stand adjourned. Be a gift to the world.